Are we ready? Hello? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for being here. This is going to be a slightly different form of event because all of our panelists appearing are going to be virtual. Unfortunately, due to the circumstances we are in, they are presenting their sessions virtually. What I would very much like to do, first of all, is introduce some of them. And starting off with Lucia Jardins, who's the NORAD focal point from Norway for addressing plastic waste and leakage under NORAD's development program. Also in the program is Indira James Henry from the Ministry of Environmental and Health, who from Antigua and Barbuda, who will be also presenting. Followed by her is John Noel from the organization from Eastern Caribbean states, who will talk a little bit about the regional issues. And also on our panel today is Carl Hunter, who will be talking about some of the issues regards to tourism and plastic waste in St. Lucia, demonstrating. And our final panelist is Wilhelmine Peters, who is not on the screen, but will be there shortly. And I would also like to take the opportunity to introduce our colleague Dominic Finnegan from IUCN's Caribbean and Mexico, Caribbean and Central American region, who actually is an instrumental part of managing the program at the ground level. So to start this session, I would like to first of all invite Laura Liu to maybe provide us with some opening remarks from the perspective of NORAD and how they address plastic waste and leakage at a global level. Laura Liu?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, so my name is Laura Liu Desjardins. I'm actually originally from Marseille, where you're having your Congress. So it would have been fantastic for me to be there. Unfortunately, I've been held back in Oslo. So I work for NORAD, which is the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, which is part of the government. And in 2018, the Norwegian government got so alarmed by the situation of oceans and marine litter that it decided to set up this development program against marine litter and microplastics, as we call it, with a total allocated budget of approximately $200 million over 6 years. So I work in NORAD in the team, which is responsible to manage this funding. Until now, we have about 40 projects, 40 partners, and we are still expanding. Small island and developing countries, developing states is one of the priorities of this program. And so the program's goal is to contribute to SDG 14.1 and has 4 outcomes. So the first one is to focus on improving waste management systems, especially in developing countries. The second one is on cleaning coastal areas and rivers from waste. The third one focuses on the role of the private sector and how to influence the private sector. And the fourth one is on global commitments, such as the UN Global Agreement on Marine Litter, which many SIDS are supporting already. So as all of you know, small islands are at the forefront of this fight against marine litter. And whether they want it or not, they are the ones receiving much of the litter on their shores and suddenly having to deal with it. I've never been to one of the SIDS in the world, but I have been to some islands which belong to, which are part of countries such as the island of Phu Quoc in Vietnam. And I remember very vividly talking to managers, hotel managers, but also local population. And some of them were spending several hours every day just picking up the litter so that the tourists could lie on the beach. And they would have all sorts of strategies depending on the tide to pick up on this side, and they knew how much would be coming from other sides. And so this was very complicated for them. What we also found was that much of the litter that was collected came from other areas. It came either from mainland Vietnam or it came from other countries in Southeast Asia. And so this came to this discussion we had with the local population, where they were telling us, but how are we supposed to solve this marine litter crisis if we're not even the ones producing this marine litter and littering our islands? It's actually coming from the outside. So how do we manage this? And then when talking to the municipalities, it's also, of course, a cost issue where the volumes are maybe too small to have enough funding to, for example, set up a recycling plant. So I think this is a dilemma for SIDS, and I would really like to say that I am also hopeful that you are on the forefront of this fight against marine litter. I know that the Norwegian government has already supported, for example, the OECS, but also project with the Environmental Investigating Agency and New York University on several projects to combat marine litter on a policy level. And also, I think we supported the Antigua and Barbuda Environmental Festival some years ago, and many of our leaders still have a vivid memory of the results of that festival. So I would like to wish you all the best for this session and the upcoming discussions. And I hope that there will be very constructive discussion during this session. Thank you, Janaka.
Thank you very much, Laura, for that very insightful overview remarks on NORAD's work and also the issues that small island developing states, or small islands actually, globally face. Our next guest is Indira James Henry, and she is the Environmental Implementation Coordinator at the Ministry of Health, Wellness and Environment of Antigua and Barbuda. And small island developing states, as you've heard, have been faced with a very significant problem, but they've also been very proactive in a number of different ways to actually address this. And one of the advantages is, in one of the examples, is Antigua and Barbuda, particularly in how they have brought about regulation in a very transparent and process way. So to that point, I would like to invite Indira basically to reflect on some of those work that Antigua and Barbuda has spearheaded in the region as an example of how to move forward. So Indira, I hope you can hear me. I do have your presentation in hand if you plan to use it, and I can move the slides should you wish to.
Yes, I can. Good morning, Janica. Thank you for having me. So Antigua and Barbuda's journey to ending plastics. As you can see, we began this journey in 2015, and we started out with the shopping plastic bag ban and also expanded polystyrene, styrofoam. So I will just give you a glance back of how we came to today's, how the concept got conceptualized and where we are at now. So the Minister of Health and Environment in 2015, the Honorable Sir Malwin Joseph noticed a negative change in trend in our environment from an early onset, and a decisive decision was made in 2015 to formalize a committee to establish solutions and strategies to deal with the huge plastic pollution that was here in Antigua. And just to give you some additional statistics, from 2014 to 2016, the total importation for plastic bags at a net weight was 1,705,512 kilograms. And this total was noticeable throughout. There was no doubt in our minds that you could not see that we were suffering from plastic pollution. Why? Once you've walked out into our beautiful landscape, it was in our trees, our gutters, our drains, our beaches. It was just totally covering the landscape here in Antigua and Barbuda. And this then led to the first round of eliminating t-shirt shopping bags. And that was done through the major supermarkets through a series of consultations with the owners. And in July of 2015, the Cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda decided to reduce the importation of plastic bags, and they invested $25,000 US so that every citizen, residence, and household, once they were going to the shops, we would then in turn give out free reusable bags to all. So that is how we started, and that was followed up by a aggressive educational campaign that consisted of many slogans, jingles, school arts competitions, so that we could have everyone on board with the mission of moving forward. And the actual ban after that was implemented in January 1st of 2016. And that initiation first stopped the importation of bags on island. And then it was followed after by giving 6 months to use up what all the supermarkets and everyone had on stock. After that was done, in the year 2018, the ministry then followed up with its education and monitoring campaign to ensure that the banned products were kept from our shores and that they were not being utilized on island. So we carried out that, and that was done through a collaborative effort with the Customs and Excise Division, Crisis and Consumer Affairs, and the Bureau of Standard, who also assisted us with the quality assurance for compostable products here. And within that monitoring program afterwards, we collected or confiscated actually 5.7 US tons of non-biodegradable material, and that is styrofoam, which was still being sneaked into the country, or those that were illegally being transmitted throughout the island. So that is where we are. And the ban for the polystyrene or styrofoam, we commenced that also in 3 stages so that we could have an easy and smooth transition here on island and that persons would not have been overwhelmed. So our first stage commenced in July 1st, 2017. Afterwards, we commenced with stage 2, which was January 1st, 2018. And then we concluded our stage 3 January 1st, 2019. So if you observe, throughout all of our bans, we always give a 6-month period, and that is to get acclimatization to the transition or the new products that we have on island. And for our ban on expanded polystyrene, it included all the food service businesses within the industry here. So whether you were a small, large grocery store or a catering industry, we did cater. Everyone falls under that umbrella. And through this, the government had to provide initiatives because changing over sometimes means that businesses do incur a cost. And the government wanted to make sure that the transition was comfortable for all those who were participating. And some of these incentives that were given out was 100%, and is still being done to this day, is 100% ABST, RRC import duties, and the environmental levy. So all businesses who are now currently selling or giving out biodegradable products, they don't pay any of these duties. Another thing was that from the first year that it was conceptualized, a certificate is given to every business who participates or who uses biodegradable products. So they get a year certificate towards green stewardship and recognition for the transition into biodegradable and compostable products. And that is still continuing to this day. Some of the identification of activities and effective strategies that we have learned throughout the bans that we have implemented were public awareness campaigns. We needed to have strong and close private sector and government partnership. That is very crucial to how we became successful. the formation of an intergovernmental committee, and being that all on the government side that has some role to play, so that you can have clarity on what needs to be done. You have to have that intergovernmental committee being formed, and followed by the finalization and regulation of binding documents, such as our guidelines for what the meaning is for a ban for your country, because across the landscape you'll find in the Caribbean region, every one ban has, it's similar, but yet still it has different components. So the clear guidelines to what our ban is was crucial, and the legal documents that we also needed to have. We also, some of the lessons that we learned that we needed additional support was that for the proposal of a regional standard for compostable and biodegradable goods. And currently we can say that that is being worked on by CrossQ, which I am also a part of, and they're doing the regional biodegradable product framework. And we're looking forward to having that completed, so across the region we can have quite consensus in what is coming in for everyone. Others would be definitely a closer relationship with your customs and border control, so that you can have effective skills management and surveillance, which is very important. Regional documents being shared, testing facilities provided by labs, and this is something major for the region because not all countries have testing facilities, and definitely regional education programs and dedicated monitoring teams. We found this also to be very important. Recommendations for further follow-up actions would definitely be those other member states who have not yet implemented a ban. We are, supporting them and pushing them towards that, so that wherever persons travel in the region, to any country, that there would be some sort of regularity, that they see that for the Caribbean region, this is what we're pushing for towards our ocean, towards marine litter, and that different products are not being used on different island states. And that concludes what Antigua and Barbuda has been doing, where we're looking to go, and some of our procedures and processes that we use to accomplish our success in our journey towards ending plastic pollution.
Thank you very much, Indira, for that really comprehensive review of how you actually addressed it, and actually a very positive message on the multiple aspects that were taken to actually make sure that the process works smoothly and effectively and efficiently. And I know some of the recent work that we've been doing with Plastic Waste Free Island, assessing the impact of it, and clearly it is seen that the regulation has had an impact, not just in these things, but actually reducing leakage at the ground level. So it really is having a practical effect. I'd like to take the focus down to the next level, which is really to start, as many of you know, the small island developing states are extremely important from a tourism perspective. And really it is one of the most vital parts of most economies. And our next guest, Carl Hunter, is from St. Lucia's tourism and hospitality sector. And Carl is going to share with us some of what they are doing to address plastic waste and leakage in the context of St. Lucia. So with that, could we have Carl on the screen, please? Okay. Carl, I think you may need to unmute yourself if you are muted.
I should be unmuted.
Okay. Yep,
Am I coming through?
Yep, we see you loud and clear.
Excellent. Very nice. Fantastic to be a part of this session this morning. I feel very honored. My name's Carl Hunter. I live in the beautiful rainforest green island of St. Lucia. Indira, I'm fascinated by your story in Antigua as well. I've been following what you guys have been doing for many years now. I'm here this morning representing the St. Lucia Hospitality and Tourism Association. And much like Antigua, but without initially the assistance of the government. The hospitality sector started looking at single-use plastic and plastic waste and the impacts, positive impacts it can make by seeking out alternatives around the same time, 2015. And we were struggling because typically what was happening is that everybody felt that it should be a proprietary thing, and individual efforts were happening all over the place in the absence of collaboration. So what we did through the SLHTA is through the environmental committee is really grouped up and looked at all of the alternatives that people were considering so that we could have a shared experience and really make proactive choices that were going to be right for not only the destination, but right for the industry as a whole. St. Lucia really only came into hospitality in 1992. Prior to 1992, we were fundamentally an agricultural island. So we've grown as, and our international branding is one very much as an eco destination. And we truly leverage the beauty that's around us. So it's really incumbent on us to support the branding that we have with really clean practices, and plastic is clearly something that we had to get on top of. So we were working through various opportunities, particularly drilling down on replacements of food and beverage containers, which seemed to be the biggest challenge. And then along the way, we got great support from the government, who actually placed a ban similar to Antigua on plastic food containers and styrofoam, and that came into effect in 2019. This was significant because with an importation ban, you remove the challenge completely. You no longer then have to have those metrics in place where you're analyzing what is coming in, how it's distributed, how it's being used, how it gets into waste streams, how it's dealt with as a waste stream, because it's simply removed from the country, which is a terrific thing and something to be applauded, and something that's taken us, and I know Antigua, very far in these efforts. So we looked at what the real alternatives were to many things. One of the challenges to replace was straws. Eventually, most of us are using a wax-coated paper straw, but rather than offering straws with drinks, for the most part, we're now messaging the need for straws, and straws are more on request than just naturally given out with drinks. We looked into being very creative. A lot has been looked at for pressed fiber containers. Bagasse fiber. Bagasse is a waste product of the sugarcane industry and makes really good high integrity food containers. Bamboo turned out to be the most sustainable exchange for plastic cutlery. We're still trying to see whether we can work with organizations to develop an edible form of cutlery. That would obviously be the ideal, because not only are you making cutlery from a food source, but you're then consuming that food source. So you don't have that environmental argument that you're utilizing a food source in exchange for plastic, because you can consume it. Yeah. We are struggling very much, however, with liquid containers, especially containers for hot liquids. Within guest rooms, a lot of our members have managed to replace much of the single-use plastics that would normally be related to the amenity provision. And even at the very high-end luxurious resorts, some of the companies who are involved in high-end amenity provision are also looking at bulk packaging so that the products within the shower, within the bathroom environment, bulk products, but nevertheless high-end and still meet the guest expectations. To a degree, COVID, our last year, has seen a little bit of a pullback from that. Some of the processes that we had integrated now require a plastic wrapping, allegedly for the perception of sterility. We're hoping to move back from that as soon as possible, but we have to be cognizant of our protocols and the transition that the world is going through in general relating to COVID. I cannot stress the importance of messaging enough. If you're going to races as a resort, You want to be able to exemplify that, to celebrate it, and to message it not only with your team members who have to support the messaging, but very much so in the information that you give to guests. Innovation and embracing of tradition has also taken up its part, and a lot of creative usage of the local containers like coconuts, bamboos, banana leaves, and of course the calabash, which makes a tremendous bowl, have also been integrated where possible. And these are excellent items to use within your food displays and completely take away the need for plastics and really exemplify what's natural within the island. One of our concerns, one of our challenges in St. Lucia, especially as it relates to the beverage containers, is what we have tended to do is move towards polylactic acid, PLA, bioplastics. And PLA essentially requires a very high temperature composting process for it to be considered as a sustainable alternative to natural products. And within St. Lucia, 100% of our waste is landfilled, and to a great shame, we don't even segregate our waste streams in St. Lucia. That's very tragic in so much as there are a number of resorts who have sought out external accreditation through environmental organizations like Green Globe, Travel Life, etc. And part of those programs is that you institutionalize waste segregation within your facilities. So our tragedy in St. Lucia is many of us are doing this. We have all of our waste compartmentalized and potentially available for repurposing or recycling. And then solid waste management comes along, collects it, combines it on one truck, and it's tipped as consolidated waste within a landfill environment. So to try to bypass some of those challenges and with a mindset of creating waste diversion, we're starting to work with the informal recycling sector and trying to find ways that our segregated waste can go to purpose and not just be recombined. One of our lingering concerns as we're moving away from plastic, because what we're replacing plastic with for the most part are paper products, and because in our situation in St. Lucia, 100% of the waste that goes through the solid waste system is landfill for now, our concern really lingers back to the overarching goal that has the most impact for the Caribbean, which is the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and the holding of global temperature rise to that 1.5%. We're particularly concerned about that because we're vulnerable, we're low-lying, and we're challenged by any kind of sea level rise. And so, although plastic itself is terrible as an environmental problem, potentially it is less of a concern as it relates to its breakdown and its energy and production in relation to paper. So we're eagerly waiting. The United Nations, UNEP, is currently working on life cycle analysis for paper versus plastic, and we're waiting to see the outcome of that results. And once we see that, we can further tweak and adjust some of the things we've been doing to make sure that we're not having unintended consequences of our good efforts. So I'm going to leave it there. I want to leave some room for some questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl, for showing us the pathway of how you took, and also ending by showing the relationship to how important it is to some broader issues that many of island states are facing, particularly as it relates to climate change, and it should be taken in the context of all of those issues. Sure. We will come back to some questions and answers to the panel, but my next guest is Wilhelmine Peters from Serious Business. And Wilhelmine will be presenting some of the work that we've been doing in the region to identify how can you actually use some of that potentially recyclable plastic and some of the methods and approaches to deal with that in terms of developing alternate value chains. So with that, I'm going to ask Wilhelmine to join the session and provide some inputs from her perspective.
Great. Good afternoon, all. I hope you can hear me. My name is Wilhelmine Peters, and like Janek introduced me, I'm going to present to you some of our work on plastic waste-free islands. I'm going to share my screen a little short. I only have 2 slides, so that will rest assured. So as you can see here, we've been working on plastic waste-free islands on implementing a few concrete solutions, which are really focused on closing the loop in plastics. We want to make sure that plastics are being kept in the economy and outside of the environment. And in order to do that, you typically need players from across the value chain and governments and NGOs, so all together. One of the vital elements in plastic waste-free islands was the importance and relevance of quantification, so knowing exactly how much plastic we're talking about, in which setting and which quality it is available. So really making sure you base your decisions on hard data. If you, for instance, look at PET bottles, which are abundant almost anywhere on the planet, you see that if you want to move into a solution called bottle-to-bottle recycling, you need a certain scale, you need certain volumes in order to do this, to run this system effectively. And if you don't know how much you're talking about, it's really hard to know if your system that you're setting up is going to be profitable. Because in order to move forward with solutions, you don't only need the relevant stakeholders on board, but you also want to make sure that something is profitable in the long run. And that could be either by setting up a alternative value chain, or by making sure that government is involved and, for instance, imposes a levy tax that will be labeled. And then you can make sure that that labeled fund is being redirected to a certain solution, making sure that a throwaway single-use plastic is effectively more expensive than a circular use of plastic. Highlighting some of the examples we are working on with islands like Antigua, Barbuda, but also, for instance, on Fiji, is the bottle-to-bottle recycling, in which we are drafting or helping to draft legislation on extended producer responsibility. So really drafting a deposit return system based on which supermarkets, but also takeaway sectors and hotels can offer vouchers or other types of customer loyalty rewards for people who return their bottles, and in which case they can also be recycled back into bottles again, including industry players on the island and outside of the island, in this case for bottle-to-bottle recycling. Some of the other solutions we're working on is specifically on fisheries. We already had a nice event during this IUCN Congress on net-to-net recycling, making sure that there is an EPR, again, like an extended producer responsibility, available for fishery producers, so fishing net producers, that will include a mandatory use of recycled content, of take-back of materials, but also including collection with local stakeholders. Another solution I would like to highlight is the waste-to-product element, where you take existing waste and you convert it back into valuable products that can be used in an island setting in this case. You need to make sure that there's a consistent demand for these products, so you don't start making souvenirs or something nice that is not actually helping to prevent single-use plastic use. But it's really about making something that there's a demand for a function or an object, and then you make sure that you can already make it from available waste sources. So capturing the value of that material. And this is something that we've been working on in different islands together with different stakeholders, and we're just the ones helping to push it, but the champions on the islands are the ones that are really moving forward, and we've helped to help them to train them and help them to really make sure that they see the benefits and they can actually run this profitable business case without any interference from outside. Where we see sometimes challenges is where the public and private sector needs to meet and work together. Both have their own dynamics, but if they work together, you can really tell there's a big difference in the way plastics is valued and used. So that's why we have drafted also our big Fat 5 policy recommendations, which are focused on an island setting to limit types of plastics, and at the same time severely limit the production of virgin plastics. That is linked to that. If you highly tax virgin plastics and or CO2, it will highly encourage the use of already used materials. So really looking into urban mining or using materials that are now in landfill or currently in use. And you encourage the transition towards reusables as well. So not just making use of an object only once, but specifically plastic is a valuable material that you can use much longer because it is so durable. And we want to make sure that at least the maximum share of recycled plastics is being used. And if you can combine these two worlds, so really about working together with governments and also with industry players and with waste cooperatives and collectors, you can really make sure that this is a system that's built to last. So not just profitable, but also making sure that there's the necessary capacity. So we're doing capacity building and technology transfer to enable an island to move to a plastic waste-free island. That's it for now from my side. Happy to answer any questions if there's any later.
Thank you, Wilhelmine. If you just hold on for a bit, we're going to have our last speaker, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers both from the audience and ourselves. So I think there's a recurring theme that you've heard so far, which is cooperation, collaboration between government, civil society, and organizations. And very specifically with regards to small islands, developing states, in particular the Caribbean, regional cooperation amongst countries, as you've heard already, is extremely important. So our last panelist is John Noel, who is with the Organization for Eastern Caribbean States. And OECS is actually extremely active in a number of different arenas with addressing not just plastics, but the broader issues of biodiversity. So I'm going to ask Joan May to provide us some insight from the perspective of regional cooperation in relation to addressing some of these issues. Joan.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good day, everyone. So I am Joan Noel, and I'm the Program Director for Biodiversity and Ecosystems Management at the OECS. A little about the OECS. We share the same marine space, and we also have a single economic union, and most of us have one currency. I should say that it is a 12-member grouping, and it includes independent, non-independent, English-speaking and French-speaking states or partners, such as Martinique and Guadeloupe. We have also moved towards free movement of goods and services across the region and also across the broader CARICOM region. A lot has been mentioned about our size and the fact that any land-based pollution would end up in the marine space and also along the chain of islands. So for us, environmental sustainability is critical for long-term regional and national development in the Eastern Caribbean, since most of our economic and social well-being is dependent on our natural resource base. It was mentioned earlier, but just to note that tourism accounts for about 50% of our economies in most of the islands, 35 to 50%, and about 50% of the jobs as well. So that is very important. It is one of the main economic sectors. And together with fisheries, these require a pristine or clean environment for their sustainability. So the issue of plastics is very, very important for the islands as such. This is also important for us because of the climate crisis and the natural hazard that has impacted the region in the past decade. And on top of that, we have the COVID-19 pandemic. So the issue of pollution is very, 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 very important. Much of the packaging in the region, as was mentioned before, is from single-use plastics. And if we are advocating for healthy, resilient ecosystems that provide goods and services, we need to address plastics more effectively. The OECS has been promoting the island systems management approach because of the proximity of the land and sea mass and the high ratio of sea to land. And we are doing this to address several issues such as biodiversity, and ecosystems, waste management, and pollution. We have also been promoting the Green Blue Economy strategy, which complements the island systems management approach, and that is an economically viable, climate resilient economy based on sustainable domestic production. And other frameworks are the Biodiversity and Ecosystems Management Framework and the Eastern Caribbean Regional Oceanscape Policy. Now, all of these are coordinating and they have some governance mechanisms, and they are all guided under the revised Treaty of Bastille, which established the OECS Economic Union. One of the challenges for us, and it has been mentioned by other speakers, is that with very little local manufacturing occurring and the low or small economies of scale, implementing recycling initiatives, extended producer responsibility programs, or deposit refund systems can be costly. At the national level, although we have institutional frameworks for solid and liquid waste management, the issue has been the poor coordination with other sectors or interests, such as the manufacturing and the retail sectors, especially when it comes to plastics. So for us, it is necessary to have this multi-sectoral mechanisms and to establish public and private sector partnerships to address marine pollution, including the transboundary movement of waste. Antigua and all the others have also mentioned that as an important aspect. So the Commission, we have recognized that transitioning to a green blue economy within the region requires dealing with the plastics before it enters the marine space. We further recognize the need for governance and coordination among the key regulatory and management entities that generate, collect, or dispose of waste, including plastics. As such, the OECS has sought to engage several national, regional, and international partners to develop and implement strategies for waste management, including marine litter and pollution. The OECS Commission intends to take a more proactive approach to waste diversion and to utilize the lessons learned and best practices from ongoing initiatives to replicate and scale up in other sectors and other member states. So the plastic waste-free islands, we have been following it, and we are a partner with IUCN through an MOU. The OECS Replast project is an initiative which deals with plastic collection, recycling, and transport or export aimed at providing a sustainable economic solution for waste disposal in small island states. And it involves both public and private sector, communities, schools, households, working together to reduce the amount of PET and HDPE plastic bottles from the environment, as well as providing financial benefits, including a digital incentive system, while promoting corporate social responsibility. This funding was provided by the French government through its embassy in St. Lucia. This phase of the project is winding down, but a second phase is expected in the near future. The Remlet project, which just like Plastic Waste-Free Islands, is a NORAD-funded initiative. Its objective is to contribute to building resilience in marine ecosystems through a reduction in marine litter in the Eastern Caribbean. It seeks to change behavior for the positively in waste production and disposal by providing incentives to change and reduce waste production, as well as appropriate systems and infrastructure to facilitate effective waste management. It has both a regional and a national component. There is also a proposed Blue Economy project, Unleashing the Blue Economy in the Eastern Caribbean, and that has a waste management component. If it comes to fruition, it will present a comprehensive picture of marine pollution at both the national and regional levels, and as well help policymakers and private sector to provide their value to protect their valuable coastal and marine natural capital, and to obtain the full benefits of the blue economy. I heard one of the issues mentioned was testing. Maybe that could be included in the upcoming initiatives, such as UBIC. And other speakers have also stressed the importance of messaging and public awareness. Just to note that communications is a key component in all of the initiatives that the OECS has been working on, and we have also seen synergies with other projects on that. We are hoping to have a model harmonized, and harmonization has been mentioned, and standardized policy and legislative framework. That will give you an integrated waste management strategy and action plan that includes sound solutions for waste collection and disposal, and as well to communicate and promote best practices for recycling. I'm very excited by the initiatives I have heard, such as serious business. And there's also looking at maybe having a transboundary marine litter strategy and action plan, which would help to meet national, regional, and international obligations in relation to waste, especially waste that is generated at sea but is treated and disposed of at ports of entry. So the OECS Commission supports initiatives such as the Plastic Waste-Free Island project, and we plan to build on the outputs of these and other similar projects to close the loop, I'm using Ms. Peters' term, in waste generation, collection, and disposal, and in this case, to close the tap on plastic leakage. I'm available if any more details are required later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joan, for providing us an overview of some of the issues with regards to transboundary work that's going on in the OECS. Could we have all the participants on the screen? Before I start asking the group any questions, I would like to ask our audience here if there are any questions that you have that you would like to ask any of the participants. Yes.
Thank you. It's not, I don't have questions per se, but I just wanted to comment on the things the panelists said. Well, first things, thank you very much for this presentations and all your insights. My name is Magali and I'm from the Seychelles Islands, so representing the Indian Ocean here. I find it really interesting all what you said, because in the Seychelles we have the same challenges and the same issues as we are an island state too. And one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking is that a lot of island states are archipelagos. We have a lot of islands, and this is even more a challenge because we have main islands where it's maybe more easier to remove the plastic or to put bans, but then the other islands, the really far away islands, to remove the plastic or to help them, it's really, it costs a lot of money, etc. And we go back to the fact that seeds don't have the means a lot of times to do all this work, and the infrastructure too. I think it was the person from St. Lucia who was talking about biodegradable or bioplastic bags and things, and the fact is in Seychelles we don't have a proper waste management, we don't have infrastructure, we don't have land to deal with all of this, and this is one of the issues I think of island states. And one of the other issues is the fact that we're islands, so we import a lot, and with importation plastic comes along. So this is actually a question for the panelists, I think. How do you deal in your islands with importation, with the plastic it brings? And wouldn't be a solution, would be maybe to produce local or to develop regional cooperation for some goods, and that would be reducing plastic. And last but not least, I think that one of the challenges is also the science we need, because science is part of the solution, as sometimes we don't know where the plastic comes from. Does it come from the sea directly, from the rivers, from the land? Which polymer is it? How we can tackle it? And the fact is, in a lot of island states and maybe in the Caribbean, but I know that in Africa we lack a lot of data, and we don't have data from where the plastic comes from. And I think this is one of the huge challenges too, the lack of data on plastic and microplastic in the ocean, and that should be, solutioned in, I don't know which way, but should be. This is for me. Thank you.
Yes. So you heard those 3 questions, I hope. The first one, how you deal with archipelagos, particularly in island context where transportation and movement of goods are expensive. The second one was really in the cost of waste management, if I understand, and really how do you actually improve it in the countries where those systems are not as solid. And thirdly, really the information and data that is required to actually provide meaningful solutions. So I think a panelist who would like to attempt to go first, maybe Indira, would you like to start talking, or Joan, and then move to some of the others? Could you unmute Indira?
Okay. I think I'll start from her last question, moving backwards. So in terms of data, that would have to be in terms of moving projects or initiatives forward, you have to have that political will. Sometimes political will takes a time. Others, on the other hand, sometimes NGOs and the private sector could push the initiative. So I think on Seychelles, I know about you guys. I actually went to school with a colleague from your island, so I'm very familiar with the island of Seychelles. It would have to be the 2 forces joining together to say, okay, this is what is happening here. We need to put some monies together, some data resources, join some collaborations such as IUCN and other international organizations who are pushing for marine and plastic litter at this time. And sit down, form a committee. I would suggest a technical committee that deals with this specific topic so that you guys could start getting that data that you need to make decisive decision as to whether or not for the next 2 years, let's start off with a ban so that we can, as Lucia mentioned, minimize the importation that is coming in, and that allows you to have some time to deal with the plastic waste that you have on island. Or should you do it in another way that you're giving incentives to persons instead of starting off with a ban? See if you can get what do we call it? Persons to reduce the amount of plastic waste. So you guys would definitely have to sit down. I would suggest either you're pushing it from an NGO perspective, private sector in perspective, or the government is at that point where they're saying, okay, from our landscape, from what persons are mentioning, this is the time to deal with marine and plastic litter. As opposed, then I think the second question was, if I can remember correctly, the dealing with it at an archipelago level. Again, that would take some time for you guys to formulate your action plan, because you can't jump up one a day and say, okay, let's tackle all the plastics and C, then we're going to start at point A and then we're going to complete by point D at this point in time. That also needs some level of planning and data collection, because a lot of resources are going to be needed. And also, are the persons in these other islands, is it that remote? Is it that you're thinking that plastic is there, but in actuality, it is not there? So again, I will suggest that a lot of planning, it seems that is the point that is missing for you guys, to see what is your collective action plan to deal with marine and plastic litter moving forward. I hope that gave a bit of insight and answer to your question and some perspective.
Thank you. Joan, would you like to?
Okay, just to mention in terms of some of the best practice in the region, we've definitely recognized that the public-private sector partnership is very important. And in some of the islands, we have the supermarkets where they have the issue of reusable bags, but also for us is the digital incentive scheme, where when you return plastics, you get points, which can be used at the supermarket to purchase stuff at the supermarket. So it's reward points for returning these plastics. Another place, I think, is St. Vincent, Grenada. They have also had a sort of sustainable, I would say, financing mechanism. I don't want to call it sustainable because it's really the deposit refund. So you have this levy, you have this deposit, and when you bring back your plastics, just as it has worked very well for glass bottles, you get. So you actually have people going and picking up bottles and plastics, or even households keeping their plastics, because when they can come and also get money back or save money, for want of a better word, because most times with the deposit refund, the price of the bottle is passed on to the consumer. It's not really the retailer that has it. So these are two things I find that has worked in some of the countries and sort of helped. But one of the things I find is very important, and waste management agencies do not see that so much, but they too have to invest in these plastic. Most of us focus on the collection of waste, but there's also, if you want to reduce waste in the landfill, governments have to see that you need to invest in recycling programs, whether it is collection. And because Seychelles is like the Eastern Caribbean with an archipelago of islands, it is not sustainable to have a recycling plant in each island. So the issue of transporting that waste, collecting and transporting to one location is very important. And that is one of the things that the OECS wants to look at. The ease of transport to bring the waste to one recycling plant where you can have the economies of scale required. So I'm not sure if that might be the Seychelles.
Thank you very much, Joan. I think Laura Lou had a comment she wanted to make.
Yes, thank you. I think that, focusing on waste management is of course key, but unfortunately the numbers we see regarding volumes, the volumes of waste, and especially plastic waste, will increase over the next 20 years. So it means that even if you build a waste management or recycling plant, I mean, that cannot be the only kind of, activity that we have, because that will not be sufficient. And especially, as you all know, depending on the quality of the plastic and the polymer, they are more or less recyclable. And then there is, of course, waste coming from that. So I think from NORAD's perspective, we see in the development of international discussions, there are two elements which could be seen as part of the solution. The first one is extended producer responsibility, which is to have a responsibility also on the producer of these plastic products. And the second one is the harmonization of the materials which are used, so that it's much easier to deal with the waste and before it becomes waste. But I understand that for small islands, developing states, being part of the discussions is also a policy issue that you need to kind of come forward to be part of those discussions. And I think you've done that very well as part of the global agreement, which we hope will become reality. So that was all from my side.
Thank you. I would love to take more questions, and I know there are some more here, but unfortunately I'm being asked to leave the stage because we have our next event beginning. So I would like to actually thank all of our participants for taking the time to be with us. I know becoming remote is not quite the same as being here in person, but I think our audience really appreciated your viewpoints and issues. And I hope, if you do have any questions that you would like to follow up, please contact me and I can pass them on to them to respond beyond this session. So with that, I would like to thank you all very much for taking the time on your busy days to be with us, and wish you all a great day. Thank you.